We're the Young Indie Chroniclers podcast, and we're producing a new feature-length documentary, George Lucas, The Lost Golden Age.
George Lucas was going to do this Lawrence of Arabia scale epic on a 16-millimeter budget.
You got a chance to have the same adventure making the show as what Indy was doing.
His stuff is really quite political.
You didn't think I was going to run, did you?
I learned that when George says he wants to ultimately change or fix something, that he was going to do it.
We built a Kickstarter campaign to support the film. Late pledges are available now at Kickstarter.com.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Force Ghost Conversations, a breaking news Force Ghost Conversations, if you will. We are here to chat about the new, kind of new news, I guess. It's officially confirmed by Lucasfilm, although rumblings have been about the internet for the last couple of months now about a potential change in Lucasfilm leadership. And today we got the official confirmation from Lucasfilm themselves, as well as an exit interview from Kathleen Kennedy. And there I'm saying it, Kathleen Kennedy, by the end of this week, will no longer be the president of Lucasfilm, instead being replaced by as we could have probably guessed, one half of the reins being Dave Filoni, who is also the chief creative officer. And then on the business side of things, Lynwen Brennan will be also co-president alongside Dave Filoni. So we have a guest on the show to kind of react and talk through our feelings and process this in live time here. Greg McLaughlin, back from the Rebel Base Card. Greg, how are you doing? And welcome to the podcast.
Good. Thank you for having me on. And never has one of my shows aged so fast as our 2026 look ahead, which talked in great length about this, was released less than a week ago, is already old news. Thank goodness I have something in the pipeline. That is my reaction. My immediate reaction is, thank God I've got another episode queued up, because boy, news travels fast. But not to be... this was expected, but it was unexpected today.
Yes. A very quick turnaround on this. Also like a 4:50 p.m. Eastern time drop. I know Lucasfilm, primarily a West Coast company, so a nice afternoon drop for them over there. But for those of us as we're ending our work days on the East Coast are like, what? what kind of thing is this? I'm used to like these kind of announcements dropping at 10 o'clock Eastern time, or 12 o'clock, something like that. A respectable 9 a.m. over on the West Coast, first thing in the morning. Then they have the rest of the day to devour the news of it all. But yeah, like you're saying, kind of expected. Didn't know when, and the fact that it looks like she's out by the end of this week, which tomorrow is Friday. It's a quick turnaround there at Lucasfilm, but apparently this has been in the works for 2 years now. At least that Kathleen Kennedy started the conversations with Bob Iger and Alan Bergman over there at Disney, and handpicked basically these two who have basically been running these roles for the last 2 years now in a large capacity to allow Kathy to do this handoff where she's like, I want to kind of be done. I've done this for 14 years, probably longer than what she intended to do. I bet the pandemic had probably some play in that and the transition when it came to that. And she's like, I want to go make interesting films again. I've read through this exit interview that you can find on Deadline, folks, and she talks like, hey, I want to make films with Frank again. Frank Marshall, of course, another wonderful producer. And she was like, he's having a lot of fun making his documentaries. And I'm like, what things can I get into? And that really excites me because, we're turning the Beach Boys podcast right now. That Beach Boys documentary on Disney Plus is amazing. Like, I've watched it twice now, because it blows your mind how interesting the Beach Boys actually are. And Frank Marshall really captures that story well. But Greg, what's your first, beyond the fact that your episode from last week has now, no longer as evergreen as you thought it might be for at least a couple of weeks here. We're only, 2-3 weeks into the new year, and you're like, oh, my 2026 episode is already, the predictions are out the window. But I tell you, any other reactions that you have at this point to this announcement?
Well, I'm glad we spent the second hour with Colby Mead from the Colby Cast just talking Stranger Things, because
a little
you can kind of forget that first hour. So I feel bad for Dennis Keithley from Podcast Stardust who came on. No, we had kind of taken what you and Greg had done, because you had did a very nice, sort of year in review, as it were, with my co-host on Breakfast Pack at Gregory Cass, and I was at one point going, "Hey, that really sounds like like a great podcast. I should probably get my co-host back,
Right.
and we should probably talk and do stuff." He's like, getting a text from Greg going, "Should we do something?" I'm like, "Yeah, you're probably right." But we carried the conversation on as far as things we were not only looking forward to, but big events, and this was one of them. I will have to say, shame on so many news outlets today that didn't reference or give a link to the actual press release from Disney.
Yes,
it took
they
a
did
while.
a poor job of that.
It took a while. Like, I'm looking around like Lucasfilm's site, and then you got kind of go back to, oh, it's Walt Disney's announcement.
Mhm.
But and as I was saying like I said, on my rapidly aging show, that having kind of been through the Apple ecosystem, working there for 13 years, at a retail store, but under Steve Jobs and then Tim Cook,
Yeah,
to see that transition, which in different circumstances, in that circumstances in 2011, Steve Jobs' health was deteriorating, and he moved very quickly into a chairman of the board situation, and then had basically this CFO Tim Cook kind of step in as interim CEO. Whereas now we are kind of hearing that Tim Cook, after all these years, is hitting 65 and going, what, maybe I don't necessarily want to do this, keep on doing this, but as just a large as large a company, you have to get these succession plans in order,
yeah.
so that there's a transition. He came in, Cook came into a very like very liquid situation where it was like, oh, he's really Steve Jobs' health is bad, oh, he's gone. And that was very abrupt. I even remember, and like I said, I'm getting away from it, they actually closed down the store when they did a funeral service from Cupertino. And so we all were kind of invited back in to kind of watch it. It was very strange for a couple hours where, we were watching a live feed, from each store to Cupertino. And so then you had that succession there. But here you have something where, Kathleen Kennedy, and we have, what hasn't been said between you, your podcast and my podcast about her accolades. I mean, anybody that just go back to Raiders of the Lost Ark, she's a producer, and wants to kind of do that. And you know what? Do you really need the day-to-day at a time when we're entering into a very different era than when she took over? And
even during, right?
She comes in and the world's kind of like Disney's oyster, as far as like, oh, we're going to make movies, we're going to do this. Disney Plus is, years down the road. But now you have a situation where it's like, all right, the movie, this is not, movie, Avengers, movie. This is, what is the streaming role? What is the movies role? And, we're seeing, kind of merchandise kind of go, is merchandise in some cases at a saturation point. The High Republic's kind of done. And so we're kind of looking for those next steps. And so you've probably got two of the best qualified people to take over, but I think each doing, I don't think any, like, we were so lucky to have George Lucas as not only, the creator, but also manager, except for that, like I said, except for the first year when ILM was run like a Muppet show. But other than that, you have, I mean, you learn from his mistakes, and then, you have this really, tight company. But now it's, as you get into these successions, you need people in the best position they can be. What you don't want to do is have Dave Filoni be something he's not. He's a creator. He can give you that stuff, but he might not be the best person to run the individual departments. But he can tell you maybe
he probably doesn't know licensing agreements.
But he does know a Star Wars or two. And so I want, Lynwen, who has been kind of like helping run ILM and Lucasfilm for a long time. She knows what she's doing. Let her do that stuff. And so, like I said, I was kind of interested in getting your reaction to this. But it's many questions I think have come up, even though this is breaking news, and I know it's a little shorter. And I think if I know your podcast, you've got a couple hours where you sequester Greg. Cass, and then I can come in for mop up duty if need be. Just sort of like, you know what, we've had Greg talk for 3 hours. All right, let's get the other one on the phone.
That's
and
right.
then see,
We'll just swap out Greg's until we milk out everything we can.
yeah, until his battery goes down, and you go, hey, I got a freshly charged Greg right over here. I'm going to take him off the charger, let him go, and then we have a 6-week podcast. No,
Yes.
but anyway, but I am curious your thoughts as it was going down today, other than just the, oh crap, it's today.
Well, first off, I'm just glad that it's announced and it's confirmed, right? I hate when there's the speculation out there. I think there was an article that went around last week that kind of speculated that this was coming pretty soon here, and then people just took it as gospel. And then I looked at the headline of the article itself, and it was like 70 things I think will happen this next year. And I was like, did anyone read like the article itself, or they just see like Kathleen Kennedy potentially out and then ran with it as it's a definite? Obviously, this woman has a storied career in Hollywood. We've talked about the accolades at length across many podcasts here, like you mentioned, and she's earned a whatever retirement she kind of wants. If is this a pseudo retirement? I think so, because it's not a day to day. I have to be in San Francisco or London or Singapore, wherever ILM has their offices, and managing people on a day to day basis. And she's like, I just want to be a producer again. I want to, I'm really excited, frankly, for like the future of like a Kathleen Kennedy unrestrained back out into the producing world, and what films can she put her magic on and stamp on in the next couple of years while we still have her ready and willing to do so. I think that'll be exciting. We kind of didn't get that with George at all. Like, he kind of teased that when he left, that he was like, oh, I'll just do these like art house films that no one will ever see or care about. And that didn't happen. He just went and made his museum, and that was a whole arduous process. So I don't discredit him for like not having the energy to want to make any type of thing beyond that. And he certainly earned his rest too in the same time, but she has as well. So I'm excited for that. I'm excited for her to take a break. These are handpicked people for a reason, like we were saying. So I have no concern or worry about where Lucasfilm is going at this point. I'm just glad that the Band-Aid is ripped off, and we're in this, getting into this next phase here. This, you could say, maybe the third phase of Lucasfilm, and it might be the most important and interesting phase moving forward here. Going back, before I get into that next phase there, I did have a interesting kind of talk with my wife here before we hopped on, was that now, hopefully, maybe in 5 to 10 years, Kathleen Kennedy will be freed from some of those NDAs, and we can really get an interesting storybook write-up on all of the things Lucasfilm over the last 14 years that she's been involved with them, right? What happened on Solo? What happened, Harrison Ford, breaks some bones from filming The Force Awakens in his plane crash, right? Rise of Skywalker, they're writing the script as they're filming it, kind of deal, firing Trevorrow, all the stuff of the pandemic and revamping Lucasfilm, streaming company, not streaming company, Indy 5. Just there's a lot of interesting stories, I think, to be told about the behind the scenes of this era, and I think when that comes out, she will get so much more credit than I think that vocal group of the fan base. I don't even think they're fans anymore. That vocal group of people online that have the red laser beam, YouTube thumbnail images, right, that they have pulled up at any moment to blame Kathleen Kennedy for everything. I don't think they'll be swayed at all. But for the people that actually like are interested in like the work and how these things actually came to be, and we appreciate and enjoy the stuff that ultimately comes out at the end of the tunnel, there will be a wonderful set of tales by which to understand further, to make us appreciate things even more along the way. And maybe we'll appreciate Kathleen Kennedy a lot more. That's another thought that I'll just throw into the ring too here, is what are those people going to do with those thumbnails that they don't have numero uno person to hate anymore? Is it going to just switch to Filoni and Brennan? Are they going to, is that the next duo that they're going to say, oh, down with them, start, bring back George, even though they kicked George out years ago? Like, it's just is the hate going to transfer to the next group now?
Well, you wonder, like, of Brennan and Filoni, who gets to inherit the cat laser eyes. But yeah, if you are amongst that group, get your thumbnails ready, because I'm sure in the days and weeks ahead, you are going to see a lot of people who are going to frame this one way or the other without probably conveniently saying that it was probably a very planned, out. It's probably going to be, like,
Yeah, they'll say,
and
"Oh, she was fired."
yeah, I think USA Today already was sort of like, it was sensationalizing it a bit, and I'm
Sure.
like, well, that's just the tip of the iceberg. And so for the cottage industry that is the Lucasfilm and Star Wars, hater universe, they're going to have probably their
Yeah,
their
run
their
wild
bread and
with it a little bit.
circuses for a little bit.
They gotta get the clicks. They'll find a way to.
Oh yeah. And, but I think what's interesting, and going back on what you said about, will Kathleen Kennedy ever talk about, it would be interesting because, when $5 billion was kind of dumped on Lucas's lawn, what were Disney's expectations of what they were looking to get out of it?
Yeah,
As
yeah.
opposed to, when Lucasfilm was its own thing, they didn't seem to be in a big hurry to kind of make movies again.
They
were
weren't.
more than happy with making, animation. Of course, we were in the middle of the Clone Wars at that time, which kind of abruptly ended. And then, you'd had Star Wars detours there. I said that dumb thing again. But they were sitting on, and, Rebels was kind of, they were working on Rebels, I think. But, after Filoni and Brennan now coming in a point where it's like, what is Disney expecting of them now?
Yeah.
Lucas never had to deal with this.
No.
So, and Kathleen Kennedy had to sort of do that transition of, what is, Disney Plus is not over Lucasfilm per se. I mean, it's just, Disney owns Lucasfilm. And thus, although Lucasfilm, except in the case of a Ben Solo movie or two, has a lot of say in what gets said. But what are the demands of Iger and company now? And, the only thing that I could say is, no matter what is asked of them, what kind of Star Wars they're going to make, I do like the fact that, I think maybe Filoni gets a freer hand, but I don't necessarily think that him and Kathleen Kennedy were probably ever at odds or arguing over it. It's just, I guess now he would have a little more of a, like, I guess he's just got to get, it's going to be interesting. And I think those are the conversations I would love to have, as far as like how him and Brennan are going to be working together. What is going to need to get greenlit? I think the only other thing that we would probably say that works in Filoni's favor is that, as someone who's been doing all these stories, we could see a little more coherent path ahead for whatever they are told by Disney they have to produce.
Maybe.
Right? That's what I would say, is that, maybe a little clearer vision. The only thing, like I said, the only thing we were saying was, don't announce something unless, darn it, it's in the can. I mean, let's just, I think getting them both on the right foot, let's just, whatever we really can say we're going to do, I'm fine with, but let's just make sure it's dang well near done.
Right.
Maybe a little further along, and say, like, you always kind of forget, like, Rogue One was pieced back together, and we've never seen the other footage from that, as well
Maybe
as
never
Solo
will.
was picking up, and never will. And buddy, those DVD extras are a little lacking in those departments for both
Sure
of those
are.
films. As someone who just notice no commentary for Tron Ares. I'm not bitter about that at all.
Not yet. It'll be on the Kickstarter for the next one.
Yeah, it'll be on Kickstarter for the next one. Although I was happy that Superman actually got its director commentary track. That's the first time I've ever seen something where I bought a digital movie. It was still in theaters, going, "Hey, it's coming soon." And I was like, "Oh, I guess you can upgrade it." And then it came on later, and you're just like, "Man, that's a Saturday afternoon. That's going to be great." But I don't think Tron Ares is going to get one. Boo. Thanks,
Just a
Jared.
Jared Leto commentary.
Thanks, Jared.
And to your point too, it's interesting because, like, Disney's also going to be in a transition very soon here. So I wonder how that dynamic will be, because Bob Iger's also kind of one foot out the door, as they keep not necessarily teasing, but like threatening us. I feel like it's the other way around. Like, Bob Iger's like, "I'm leaving soon, guys. You better pick somebody, and pick him good, because I'm not coming back this time."
Large publicly held companies, you really have to, these things take a lot of time, and you go through it, and it's
a lot of search groups and firms and interviews, and Yeah, a lot of stuff going in
And
there.
as we saw with Disney before, they didn't necessarily get it right. Although you start to wonder once again, I'd love to see his book in about 5 years to go. What was really the deal with it? It seemed this guy knew
Mhm.
what the other guy knew what he was doing. Bob, the other Bob, right? It was a Bob too,
Bob
right?
Chapek, yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say. And, banger on the parks, but, I don't know. Let the people be the people.
Well, yeah, we'll figure it out. We'll find out. I do want to highlight in this exit interview that she has, Kathleen Kennedy does note about where the status of some projects are right now. Some much talked about, or we were saying like, hey, give us, where are these things at that you keep announcing? Apparently, the Taika film has a script that they turned in that they're interested in. So that's getting some traction, maybe again. I don't know. The Donald Glover has turned in a Lando script. Apparently, the Mangold film is on the back burner right now, so don't expect that anytime soon. No mention of the Rey film. Who knows? Shrug on the Hunt for Ben Solo. That got an ask. And apparently, the Simon Kinberg trilogy is potentially the next thing that we see beyond Starfighter and Mandalore and Grogu. So that's what the big takeaways I think from that are, in terms of like the next theatrical Star Wars experience is the Simon Kinberg thing that kind of was just kind of tossed out there, and then I think maybe a lot of us fans really just kind of didn't give any credence at all, because we're like, great, tell me more when you get something. So who knows? I think that's really it. And the funny thing is that they ask Kathy about like, hey, where are the status of this? And she gave those updates on the scripts and like, hey, these were turned in. And then they're like, well, what's going to production next? And she's like, I put my bet on this, but ultimately it's up to other people now. I'm not the one deciding what goes into production next. You'd have to ask Dave and Lynwen about the next steps here. So it's interesting that like it's already out of her hands. She knows nothing. They're taking the reins of it. Let's see where it goes from here. And we're passing the blame on to other people now.
Yeah, and it does sort of take a little bit of the piss and vinegar out of the situation, because a lot of releases have had folks that have been just piling on as soon as the word go is given.
Mm-hmm.
And although Filoni has his critics, like I said, the Mando and Grogu will be very interesting, because this is going to happen under the new watch.
Yeah.
And although we have had we've seen a little bit here or there, it's how it's going to play out, what's in it, the story, and how it's going to finish is largely, I think, up for grabs, as well as the reaction and how it's going to do in the box office. You have everything from, The Force Awakens, which I think made, set a tone. I don't know how you can ever redo that again unless you stop making it for another 20 years and bring it back. So, what's going to be enough to satisfy what Disney wants and also kind of give what the fans need. But I think there's enough there, and you kind of go through all those scripts and you go, yeah, this is probably how it works, where it's like, look, we have a shelf full of things, and if that one works now, we'll pursue it. If not, and these spec scripts probably get written all the time, and these directors,
sure
they live. Look at Martin Scorsese, he's still banging stuff out, and he's not a spring chicken. But so I think it's up to them what they want to do, and that's where I kind of go back to. I'm like, all right, kind of reminded me, like how we felt after Steve Jobs passed, and Johnny Ive kind of were like, Johnny's still there, right? The lead designer. Little did we know how much Steve really kind of kept a little damper on old Johnny and his designs. But there was that it helped, I think, for us sort of smooth out that transition, because you go, who's going to take over after Steve goes? I mean, what's going to happen? And and in many ways, Tim Cook did a lot more. Apple became a much bigger company, and Tim was the right person for the job. I think these two are right for the job. And I do think that, I like the storytelling that Dave Filoni does. I like the characters he's created, and okay, do they lean on Ahsoka? Well, that's them. And by the way, Ahsoka's got the legs for it. This is a character that was introduced in 2007, 8, something like that.
2008, yeah.
And then, we've seen her come in many different fashions, but, really has, Rosario Dawson has done an excellent job, and they
Mhm.
have really done a great job. And I see nothing. Like I'm almost kind of looking forward more to Ahsoka season 2 than Mando, because I kind of know
Got
what
it.
I'm going to get with Mando.
Yeah.
But we saw just a taste of, I think, what we're going to be expecting with Ahsoka, and I think that pushes the whole story that we've now been kind of invested in since Mandalorian season 1
Mhm. Mhm.
forward, and go, all right, what's going to happen next? As much as, okay, Starfighter's going to be this own thing over here that, okay, we'll see where it goes. I'm excited. I don't know anything about it, and I don't have, my expectations are not as high for it. But I don't really know how I feel yet about Mando Grogu, other than the fact I will not be here when the darn thing premieres. I will be overseas, so I will see
There's
it after
cinemas over
everybody
there.
else does. Yes, as a matter of fact, that's interesting you say it, because yes, it'll come out in the theaters in both London and Paris the same weekend as it does here in the U.S.
You could theoretically see it before everybody because the time difference.
Possibly, but there'll be things I have to do. But at any rate,
Forget
but yes,
vacation. Star Wars comes first.
shh, let's keep Greg married, shall we? Uh, but at any rate, yeah, I actually like it. I'm happy that it's done now.
Mhm.
And then I love the conversations, and I love what your show can do, because
Yeah.
we can talk about this and we can break down these different facets and give them the Anthony and
The
Greg
time of day.
test type
Yeah.
time, where it's like, all right, let's just crack those knuckles and let's just dig into this and just enjoy it, because I think that the questions
Mhm.
that this leaves, other than the fact that I hope someone gave her a box or two to clear out her desk tomorrow, because my desk is
Yeah,
a
hopefully she's
mess,
been
and I've
doing it a little piecemeal here and there over the course of the last couple of months.
been working for the same company for 20 years. I'm like, it's going to take me some time. You better give me a couple days notice, because then I a couple of boxes. But I mean, with her, like, you just for the awards alone, I mean, like,
That's right.
but is she going to get like a little side office that she can kind of go into, at her leisure? And do they change the keys? Do the key cards change?
I'm sure they
Uh,
do. You think she
we had
gets an emeritus badge? She can just come in whenever she wants.
yeah. Who's going to tell her no? Yeah, I know. We had an employee that got another job, and so they dropped their equipment off today, and on a very cold day in Chicagoland. And I had to take down the little cart. Even her hadn't been there that long. A lot of
Mhm.
stuff. So at any rate, but yeah, and do those projects fall under, what umbrella does that fall under? But yeah, I'm curious, where are we going to hear the first comments from either of the two, other than the
Yeah.
ones that are in the press release?
Yeah.
And it's almost a shame that we don't have a celebration this year, because that would have given an opportunity for,
Well,
you know,
if only there was another type of convention, major convention that's taking place in the California area this
yeah,
upcoming August.
I can't. It's right on the tip of my tongue to think about. But you know what? Okay, let's. Like I said, I don't want to spoil the future conversations, but it will be interesting when the press junkets for Mando and Grogu get started. How
Mhm.
many extra questions will be now that you're running Lucasfilm?
Oh yeah.
Dot
Oh yeah.
dot dot. Because he's going to have to go on that. So will they kind of traipse them out next week? After have to let the body get warm,
Yeah.
cold a little bit, and then let them
New
craft.
new sheriff in town. Yeah.
New sheriff in town, literally, and he brought his own hat. So there you
Mhm.
go. But yeah, as of right now, if you look on the websites, the websites still have their old titles up, so it still
At
has,
least for one more day.
at least
They got
for
that
one more day.
Friday.
And I was like, have they changed it yet? But he still has executive vice president, chief creative officer, and Lynwen Brennan still has president and general manager, Lucasfilm Business. And of course, since she was on the same tier on the website, like I said, just
They're just bumping him up.
who gets first billing on that page? Is it Dave and Lynwen, or Lynwen and Dave?
I
So
think
there
it's
we go.
Dave probably. They'll probably put a leg up on the creative side of things, but that's just me speculating.
They'll call it alphabetical order and then be done with that.
Yeah, exactly. Either way you want to spin it. Alphabetical comes first. So, but I think that's where we'll conclude here, Greg. It's been a blast just kind of processing through this change here very abruptly, but I think we're both on the same page of, hey, let's see what they do now. It's time for some new blood to come in and to see what are kind of the first announcements that they'll have, right? Will Dave just handpick some other people to, like, will Dave pick the Dave himself, right? Is there already someone at Lucasfilm that he's picking that in 20 years will be taking over, that it's slowly like George passed down to Kathy passed down to Dave to someone else? And who knows? That could be the case, but I mean, time will tell, and we'll just have to be along for the ride when we're podcasting 20 years from now and talking about the next change at Lucasfilm. But I implore everybody to go check out the official press release, StarWars.com, Lucasfilm.com. It's available there. Disney, of course, too. And there's an incredible exit interview basically that they did a couple months ago. So I was kind of leading up, showing you how this has been kind of a planned transition for Kathy Kennedy here on Deadline. You can check that out. They'll talk about Solo, Indy 5. She's a lot more open about talking about where she thinks things faltered and whatnot. We can always have more discussions about that. I don't know if I necessarily agree with some of these comments here, but that's a discussion for a different day here. We're here to celebrate Kathy Kennedy and the incredible accomplishments that she's had at Lucasfilm over the years, and to wish the best of luck for Dave and Lynwen as they embark on this new journey here together, starting officially on Monday. Well, Tuesday, I guess. They're probably off Monday. So they're Tuesday, they're hopping back on the train there and seeing where they go. Long weekend, of course, here, folks, in the United States. Greg, thank you so much for joining. Any final thoughts, and where can the folks find you if they want to continue the conversation further? And check out your episode that's no longer evergreen from last week.
Makes a pitch for having chapters in your podcast. Although I think now on Apple Podcasts, and I think do have a lot of those AI transcripts, so you can
they automatically do it for you.
So you can just kind of fast forward ahead, or you can see where we completely were off base. But no, I think we were kind of in the same boat. It was just
you speculate in a good way.
Speculating in a good way. But yeah, we had a great conversation. It's a long one, but I decided to keep it together. But that's currently on the Rebel Base Card podcast, and of course the whole feed there. If you go to Apple Podcasts or Spotify, what's coming up will be the Steam into Star Wars, or excuse me, the Steam into the Storyverse
Nice.
episode. That was last Saturday down in Washington, Community High School, Washington, Illinois. Tom Gross, just they really blew it out of the water. Those kids, they had Harry Potter world, they had a superhero world, they had a Star Wars world, they had gaming, all that kind of stuff. I think we had about 400 kids down there.
Wow.
And a podcast stage that was hopping the entire time. It was great. Ross Holliman was down there from Fantha Tracks. Dan Zier, of course, Coffee with Kenobi. He did Coffee with Kenobi, CWK Pour Over, and then he drove up here and saw the Bears win. And I think he got back like at 3:30 in the morning.
Wow.
After a Bears win. So he was he was all that. But yeah, that's going to be a fun show. It's a nice tight show because we were able to do our podcast live there, and I remembered to stream it on Instagram at the time.
Oh, awesome.
So that whole show plus all the extra interviews are in that. And then, I'm just starting to kind of get stuff together. I kind of like putting out the teasers to, Mark Newbold over at Fantha Tracks. He always comes around this time of the year, and it's a great catch up with him. And then we are getting those second breakfast engines going because I think we're going to have Dennis, Colby, and I think Jen help us out on this second arc of Andor season 2. So be kind of doing one of those. I think we'll be recording those pretty soon, and a lot of other stuff. It's been kind of fun, kind of putting out feelers and seeing who has time and who has availability. The top Star Wars card trader just had a massive update, and we've had new Star Wars cards coming out, and all this kind of stuff. So it's January 2026. We've got a full year, so I'm excited.
That's right.
And you can find me on the socials at Rebel Base Card just about anywhere.
Well, I love it. You're hitting the ground running. Steam into Storyverse, right? I almost said Steam into Star Wars as previously titled, but now it's Steam into Storyverse. Now that's exciting, and excited to see where it goes as it expands its kind of format here. And it sounds like it was a big success, getting a lot of kids there and a lot of people there to celebrate all types of ways to celebrate fandom. And of course, excited for those second breakfast packs. You got a lot of time. It seems like there's until Mando and Grogu, the next thing that comes out in Star Wars. So you got to fill that time up. Go check out Andor again. What a better way to do it. And folks, go check out that and Greg's other podcasts, of course, on the Rebel Base Card podcast feed. And thank you for listening to this breaking news edition of Force Ghost Conversations. We'll, of course, be back Sunday with a brand new episode. You don't want to miss that one, trust me. And thank you for hopping on as we just quickly got on the mics and we're like, we got to chat about this news. So I hope you followed along with us here as we process through this change here, and hopefully you are too. But thanks again for listening, and until next time, may the force be with you. Take care.